Today's lesson, we're going to be reading Rocketing into Space out of your companion. So we're going to go through it together on this video, and then you will also have this resource available to you on ConnectEd if you would like to go back and reread things or listen to the audio on there as well. When we finish with this together on this video, you'll also have these pages to work on in Seesaw. So we'll go through it together first, and then you can go back and look at these questions on your own later. So our theme for this unit is biography and narrative fiction, which we talked about a little bit last week. The biography just means that it's a true story of someone's life, but it's not written by them. So I can see already on this page that I see a picture of something that is real. And I see a picture of a man, so I'm guessing that this man is the person whose life we're going to be reading about in this passage, Rocketing into Space. We're sticking with our essential question, which we saw in the video of the week, so hopefully you have watched that. If you haven't, go back and look at our video of the week, and you'll see another video about goals there. So why are goals important? We're going to read how one man used his education and experience to reach his goals. So let's start by reading this together, and then we'll talk about some of the pieces.
When James A. Lovell Jr. was a boy, he loved to build rockets and launch them into the sky. But his dreams went a lot farther than his rockets. Like many boys who grew up in the 1930s, James dreamed of being a pilot. And as he watched his rockets soar, he knew someday he would too.
So already in this introduction, so there's a heading here, there's a subtitle here, but there's none here. So that's how I know to call this an introduction, because I see the title and then I see kind of some general information about the person we're reading, James A. Lovell Jr., and kind of some general information about him, almost like a main idea statement. Nothing too specific yet, but I can already tell. If our essential question is why are goals important, can I already see that he has a goal here? I see he dreamed of being a pilot. So if you dream of something, we could call that a goal. So we could say James' goal was to be a pilot. He watched his rocket soar, and he knew someday he would too. So he started to know that that was his goal or his dream.
When James A. Lovell Jr. was a boy, he loved to build rockets and launch them into the sky. But his dreams went a lot farther than his rockets. Like many boys who grew up in the 1930s, James dreamed of being a pilot. And as he watched his rockets soar, he knew someday he would too. High-flying dreams. James was born in Cleveland, Ohio in 1928. He worked hard in school and planned to go to a special college to study astronomy and rockets. Unfortunately, he didn't have enough money to attend. James had to figure out another way to reach his goal. James was motivated to find a way to fly rockets. So, he went to college near his home for 2 years and then signed up for flight training at the United States Naval Academy. After 4 years at the academy, James joined the United States Navy and became a professional naval test pilot. His job was to fly planes before anyone else was allowed to fly them. Caption: James A. Lovell Jr. became an astronaut in 1962. He flew 4 space missions.
Okay, so if I look back at this heading, High Flying Dreams, we already know what he was dreaming of, or his goal was to be a pilot. So then we see in this paragraph, we see some of the things that he did to try to get there. So we know where he was born, when he was born. We know he worked hard in school, and he planned, so that gives us an idea of what he had in his head. He planned to go to a special school, but was he able to do that? If I keep reading, it says he didn't have enough money to attend. So that's going to be a problem in him reaching his goal. So instead of just quitting and saying, well, I can't afford to go to an astronomy school, I can't afford to go to that special place that'll help me achieve my goal, instead of giving up, he finds another way to reach his goal because he was motivated. Motivated. I see that's highlighted in yellow. That's a vocabulary word, motivated. So he was motivated to find a way to fly rockets. If we think about what his goal is, if he wants to fly rockets, then being motivated helps us understand he wants to. It's something that's driving him to do something. So motivation is what makes you do something. Okay, so he took a couple steps here. He went to a local college and then he went to the Navy so then he could become a professional naval test pilot. So it wasn't the way he wanted it at the fancy school, but he found a way to keep going towards his goal.
Pilot to astronaut. As a pilot, James spent more than half of his flying time in jets. He taught other pilots how to fly. He also worked as a specialist in air flight safety. Soon, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA, put out a call for astronauts. James applied for the job because he had all the essential skills needed to fly into space. As a result, NASA chose him. By 1962, James Lovell was an astronaut. He had finally reached his goal. Big challenges. James flew on 3 space missions, and then in April 1970, he became commander of the Apollo 13 mission. This was a big responsibility and a great honor. This was also one of the biggest challenges of James's life. Apollo 13 was supposed to land on the moon. 2 days after leaving Earth, however, the spacecraft had a serious problem. One of its oxygen tanks exploded. The crew did not have enough power or air to breathe. They could not make it to the moon.
So I'm going to pause it right here because I see, first of all, that he made it to his goal of being an astronaut. But then in this section here, it says big challenges. They're giving us some problems that he's faced. So he becomes a part of this mission, Apollo 13 mission. He's got a big responsibility, but he's also got a pretty big challenge. It's underneath here. You can't see it very well, I know. But it does say that it was supposed to land on the moon, but 2 days after leaving, it had a serious problem. So they're giving us what the problem is. The oxygen tanks exploded. Why is that a problem on a spaceship? If I keep reading, hopefully you said because they won't have enough air to breathe. They're not going to be able to make it to the moon. So if there's a problem, I'm guessing there might also be a solution. Let's keep reading.
James communicated with the experts at NASA. No one knew what to do at first. Then the team on the ground did some research and came up with a solution. The astronauts followed the team's directions and built an invention using plastic bags, cardboard, and tape. It worked. It cleaned the air in the spacecraft. But the next problem was even bigger. How were the astronauts going to get back to Earth? Caption: NASA's team works to solve Apollo 13's problem.
Okay, so when we stopped before, we discovered what the problem was, and then we have information that kind of gives us a solution. So how does this fit in goals? Why are we talking about problems and solutions when we were talking about the essential question of having goals? So if his goal here on Apollo 13, if his goal was to land on the moon and there's problems that come up along the way, would they just give up? Would they just stop trying to reach that goal? Or would they be motivated to try something else to solve the problem?
A job well done. The NASA team decided the astronauts would use the lunar or moon module as a lifeboat. James and the other 2 astronauts climbed into the smaller spacecraft and shut the hatch tight. They moved away from the main spaceship. With little power, water, food, or heat, the astronauts listened carefully to the team at NASA.
That's a pretty serious problem, right? Those are things you need: power, water, food, heat. If you're out in space and you don't have those things, that would be a huge problem for you.
The trip back to Earth was dangerous and scary. For almost 4 days, the astronauts traveled in the cramped capsule. They were cold, thirsty, and hungry. Then, with millions of people watching on television, the module fell to Earth. Years later, James Lovell said that Apollo 13 taught him how important it was for people to work together. His favorite memory was when the capsule splashed down in the Pacific Ocean and he knew they were safe. Sidebar: a dream come true. Did you ever dream of going into space? Check out Space Camp. Space camps have been around for more than 30 years. They make science, math, and technology exciting so kids will want to learn more. And, like the NASA training programs, these camps teach the importance of teamwork and leadership. Caption: the Apollo 13 crew splashed down safely on April 17, 1970.
Okay, so we saw the other problem and we saw the solution here and what was happening to solve the problem with the spaceship Apollo 13. We also see how important it was that James relied on the people around him, that he was brave and that he kind of barreled through and did what he needed to do to solve the problem. So in your assignment today, you're going to have these pages on Seesaw, and I want to point out to you that these questions are right next to the text for a reason. You should not just be reading this question and then putting in your text box for your answer, because there's a lot of information in here, and there's a lot of information that we're not readily familiar with because we don't know a whole lot about spaceships and astronauts and things like that. So it would be very helpful for you to go back and look at specifically what paragraphs they're asking you. So this one, paragraph 1 and 2, go back and look at paragraph 1 and 2, reread that, and then answer your question. I can tell the difference when you do that because your answers are so much better. They're more descriptive, they give me details from the text, they're more specific as opposed to just trying to remember what you can from the story. So you will find this text on ConnectEd if you want to look at it in a different way other than how I recorded it, and then you will have your assignment on Seesaw.